Hello and welcome to another edition of Morning Hoops Basketball Podcast. I am Anthony Deneau. You can find me on Twitter at Anthony Deneau. He is Kyle McEwen. You can find him on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA. Kyle, how are you doing tonight?
I'm tight, man. How are you living?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Are you giggling about the question you asked?
No, I was working on something in the background, and so when you were asking me a question, I wasn't really listening to you as much as I was trying to get something set up for us. And then I started to ask myself, can we share an athletic article on the podcast, like on the screen, considering it's a 4-page site? So then I was going over that dilemma in my head.
I understand. Yeah. I know what article you speak of. We'll get there in just a little bit. Should we get right into some weekend news?
Yeah, let's do it.
David Fizdale fired on Friday. So we have our first coach firing of the year. You tweeted last week about how it was almost a foregone conclusion that Fizdale was going to be fired, him and likely Beilein at some point. But starting with Fizdale, Mike Miller's going to take over now. And you were not a fan of Fizdale from the get-go, but the pieces never really seemed to fit what a basketball team should be with all the power forwards they have.
Oh, yeah. The front office has been, you got to go all the way up to the top. And the top is James Dolan, the owner. And since he's been the owner of the team, they've been terrible because even when they've been on a good path and loading up on assets and creating a team that fit the coach they had when they had D'Antoni and they had Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, and then they decided, well, Carmelo wants to come to New York. If we can get Carmelo, let's trade everything we have, everything that we've built up. I think it was Donnie Nelson at the time. Or Don Nelson? No, not Don Nelson. Anyways, I can't remember exactly who it was, but they ruined it for him. So now we've seen that persist with Steve Mills in the front office for the Knicks. Now, the most interesting thing about Fizdale getting fired is that there are reports that the team is finally looking to minimize Steve Mills' role going forward, and that we're actually going to see maybe someone like Masai Ujiri get paid enough money to go in there and really take over. But if a guy like Masai Ujiri is so intelligent and smart in considerations of knowing not to put himself in a position to fail, that if he takes over that job, I'm sure it's going to be with either just an absurd amount of money for an absurd amount of years that you don't usually see for a president or GM. And there's got to be assurances from James Dolan that he's not going to put his thumb on the scale on anything or come into the office and start demanding this or that happen with the team.
So what's next? I mean, for Mike Miller to take over, there's really nothing that's going to make this team.
This is not Mike Miller, former Rookie of the Year. It's okay. So this is just a coach, an assistant coach. He was coaching down in the G League for the Knicks recently. They brought him up, put him on Fizdale's staff. And now Keith Smart, I believe, was the head assistant for Fizdale, but they fired Keith Smart in pairing with Fizdale. So then they handed the job to Mike Miller. Mike Miller started the same starting lineup that Fizdale had been using, even though Fizdale said at the practice. So one of the contentious things that the media has been bringing up is how just unprofessional the Knicks are as an organization and how they always shoot themselves in the foot PR-wise by doing stuff like responding to Richard Jefferson's story the other day, where Richard Jefferson was like, the Knicks, when the Knicks offered me a contract, I knew it was time to retire. And then the Knicks actually gave a PR response to that the next day to be like, we never actually offered him a contract. And it's just like, dudes, it was a joke. He's the color analyst on the, on a broadcast. Like, he's supposed to crack jokes. Have you not listened to Richard Jefferson on a Nets broadcast yet this year? So anyways, just ridiculous stuff from the Knicks. And what they did with Fizdale on the day of his firing is they let him come in after he lost by 40 points, or in 2 straight games being down 40 points, having both of those games happen back to back. It was a lot of the media was tweeting out like, Fizdale's gone. You don't survive 2 games like this because it just doesn't happen historically. So the writing was on the wall, but they still let Fizdale, or made Fizdale, come in the next day, run the practice as if he was going to coach the next game, And then after lunch, they decided, all right, we're gonna dump him. And of course, we all got the Woj bomb about that. But as far as where it goes, I don't know that we have a lot of hope for right now until they get somebody new in the front office. Like Mike Miller being put into position by the same front office staff that put Fizdale into position. And it's just hard to expect that there's going to be a big change in what the team does. Although they did just get Elfrid Payton back, so maybe we see some changes to the rotation going forward. And hopefully they look at what they have and where they are in the standings right now and just say, all right, as much as we thought we were going to try and compete this season, hopefully they just commit to the future and start playing guys like Kevin Knox more than what they have been, because having Marcus Morris go out there and play a bunch, the only reason you even do that right now is if you're trying to build up his trade value to get back a better pick from somebody.
All right, so let's talk about David Fizdale's angle in all this. This is his second time being the head coach, and now he's without a job already again. Just a few years ago, he was one of the top assistants in the league under Spoelstra and during the LeBron Heat era. What's next for him? Is he now going to have is he now a career assistant coach? I mean, is this it for him in terms of being a head coach?
You never know, because you just got to find one front office or one owner who thinks that you've got the stuff. And it's all about narratives too. You go to a certain team, you coach on a certain staff, and they become successful. And then by proxy, you become part of that narrative. So it just depends. I wasn't a big fan of what Luke Walton did with the Lakers, but the Sacramento Kings were like, what? You're letting him go? Let us get him. So, and I was never really a fan of Dave Yeager in a lot of respects, but as soon as the Grizzlies let him go, the Kings were snatching him up. Granted, that's weird that I just referenced the same team for two different coaches getting snatched up, and not liking them. But as far as Fizdale, it's hard, man. I'm very critical of his decision making and his the way he ran his rotations with the Knicks over the last 2 years. So. And looking back to the Grizzlies, you see some of those same foibles that I think he had in his decision-making processes that carried over to the Knicks. Now, the Knicks, there just wasn't as much talent there, but I still feel like the talent that he did have, he could have done better things with it.
I think that's fair to say. He wasn't put in a good situation, but as you said, the rotations, the starting three power forwards in the front court, it was just a really weird way to go about things, and this is how things go in the NBA. You really thought this was going to happen from the get-go this season.
Oh, I think there's a lot. I mean, a lot of people, when Julius Randle first got signed in the summer, everybody said, whoa, that's an interesting signing. He's an interesting fit. A lot of people liked the RJ Barrett pick, even though RJ Barrett struggled in summer league. But once they signed Bobby Portis, once they signed Taj Gibson, it was just, once they brought in Elfrid Payton, you just kind of looked at who they had and how it was going to make Fizdale's decision-making process harder too. Because if you have Frank Ntilikina and Dennis Smith Jr. as your primary point guards, and then you can look at your third point guard as being like an Alonzo Trier or Kadeem Allen, who's your two-way player, guys that you can turn to in those situations. No, you threw in Elfrid Payton to this mix, a point guard who plays very similar game to what Julius Randle plays as a power forward. And then you've got RJ Barrett, whose best use in the NBA or as a player is having the ball in his hands, playmaking, going to the rim off the dribble. He's not somebody you have running off the ball. He's not somebody you rely on as a consistent shooter. So now you're just having this propensity of similar talents, and in this NBA atmosphere, you're not putting any shooting around all these drivers. What are you doing? And then you don't have any guys who are considered stellar defenders out on the perimeter. So what do? You leave your best rim protector and perimeter defender in Mitchell Robinson on the bench instead of starting him. A lot of things that just don't make sense, but you knew that some of these rotation stumbles or roadblocks that were put there by the front office weren't all of Fizdale's faults. Just because there's a consistency of opinion in the media or on Twitter about how the Knicks may want to be doing things. There's the politics of actually being the coach and having these guys on the roster. The ideas from the front office about who should be playing and how how you should be competing, all these kind of things. Like there's a lot more to where you end up coming to your decisions at the end than what we all think.
So that's one coach down in the NBA. We have our theories of who might be next. We've already talked about Jim Boylan on the Bulls quite a bit on this show. But John Beilein, someone whose name came up over the weekend, and an interesting story here. You want to tell us a little bit more about what's going on in Cleveland?
Yeah, Joe Varden and Shams Charania wrote a story on The Athletic that was about essentially like a player revolt on John Beilein, saying that he uses terminology that is outdated or too juvenile or too collegey for NBA vets. But this team has a bunch of young guys, and then it's got a couple of old guys, or quite a few old guys, in Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson. Now, it's an oddly put together team. I think everybody expects Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson to be on the trade block, as well as guys like Matthew Dellavedova potentially, or a Brandon Knight. Like, this team is fully leaned into their youth in a lot of ways. Now, a lot of Cleveland people say Tristan Thompson's not going anywhere, which I think is interesting to be reading through on Twitter, but we'll see how that goes. Some of the quotes from this article in The Athletic were pretty shocking. Here's the first one. Guys drowned out his voice. And when guys start searching for the next in line for help, I believe you've lost them, one Cavs player said. And then two more quotes. The little things become big things, and sometimes very big things, another player said. And finally, our assistants are definitely more prepared for the NBA, a third said. So I guess, how do you react to these quotes? Is there anything about them that sticks out in regards to whether or not they come from players or potentially even maybe coming from a coach?
It doesn't paint a good picture, man. I mean, anytime like that phrasing where you're really they're just out there doing whatever they want in a lot of ways, or not taking in any information. And if you're the first year coach, or is it his second year?
No, he just got hired this offseason from out of Michigan.
Because Juwan Howard took over at Michigan.
Yep.
That's right. With the crying press conference. So that's tough, man. It's pretty early in his coaching career to be dealing with this kind of stuff, and a team that you think would at least give him a shot, because they don't, like you said, they have a couple proven guys, but beyond that, and the product they're putting out there is also not very good. It's not very entertaining, and they're in a rough spot no matter what. And
I mean, you're bringing back Kevin Love, who missed a lot of last season due to injury. You've got Tristan Thompson, who was injured coming into the season. Or no, I believe he did. He missed some time. But you got Darius Garland starting at point guard. You've got Colin Sexton, an undersized guy who you drafted just last season. Now he's a sophomore. You played him at point guard all year. Now you're trying to get him to play shooting guard. But you're still allowing him and cajoling him to become a better distributor, which is just, there's like a confusion of a lot of things, as well as trying to integrate a coach who is going through his rookie season in the NBA, even though he's an older guy. And yeah, some of the weird choices that Beilein might make in regards to his terminology. Like, one of the things they talked about was one of their plays being named polar bear. A curl is a polar bear in Beilein's system. And the quote here was, you don't go to pro to do that kind of thing. And it's one league source said, so it doesn't say, a player. This could be an agent or a coach, or, anybody in the league someone from the front office, if they want to paint Beilein in a bad way, because maybe even the Cavs GM is regretting hiring Beilein, and he's saying to himself, like, oh my gosh, how can I put out some kind of PR that's going to make it look like this isn't my fault and not something I could have expected coming in?
Right off the bat, Beilein, to me, I didn't see him being a good fit in the NBA. Of all the college coaches to make the step, he was not somebody that would have been on my radar. I just don't see him getting the hold of young NBA stars. Here's the similarity.
Trey Burke. Mo Wagner?
Here's the similarities. See, you've left out my two favorites, Jordan Poole and DJ Wilson.
Right.
So
Karis LeVert.
Right, there you go.
I mean, look, these may not be big names, but that's a lot of guys to come from his recruiting.
It is.
And we didn't even mention Mitch McCready.
Right. And he was great at was it West Virginia before Michigan? I mean, he's a very good coach.
Yeah, no, he's been successful everywhere he's gone at every level. He built himself up from a high school coach to just climbing the ranks. So there's a lot of fun things to look at from Beilein. Now, his system in college was more of a modern system. It was a spread them out, shoot a bunch of threes thing, and he was doing that for a long time. So I think that's one reason why he appealed in regards to potentially coaching in the NBA. I think it's all too early for this kind of a piece to be coming out, and any of the guys on that team that aren't understanding their spot on the team, whether it's Jordan Clarkson or Kevin Love, who has he actually went on. It was after their last game, after a big loss. Kevin Love getting interviewed after the game. Somebody asked, what do you think happened in this game? And he just flat out said, "We sucked." And then he went on and on about not really knowing what they need to fix. This also came after the fact, though, that Kevin Love was reported to be on the trade block by Wojnarowski on live TV. So there's a lot of things going on with this team where it's like you can't necessarily just point to the coach and say he's the sole reason for the team struggling.
One similarity there is, I think, between Fizdale and the Beilein situation is just having weird pieces, and that goes back to the Sexland experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, looking at those two guards and saying, well, we drafted them high, so they're going to be CJ McCollum and Dame Lillard. It's like, no.
Well, they're even smaller than the Portland backcourt, and the Portland backcourt is, you would say, they're both average-sized point guards, but to have them both play so similarly, but then
it's a delusional idea.
Yeah,
Kobe Altman made a mistake there. Maybe he'll prove us wrong or prove me wrong, but I think it was just like a bald face from the get-go. Drafting Colin Sexton where they did last season was just like, what are you doing? That's not the guy you start your build around with. He's someone you draft at like the maybe the 20th pick, because you look at him and you go, he's going to come in, he's going to be our sixth man, he's going to score for us, he's going to do it efficiently, he's essentially going to be the next Lou Williams. You start looking at him as maybe being that, but like that's an absurd. That's an insult to Lou Williams to compare Colin Sexton to him right now. So I guess one other thing to talk about from this Beilein situation is the fact that you had Larry Nance come out and defend Beilein and talk about the fact that like he was surprised to see some of these quotes that came out, didn't deny the fact that they were real though, saying that like he's never had a problem with any of his head coaches, and like he's had several coaches and every coach is different, and he just kind of was very explanatory about the situations, as well as someone who surprised me. Tristan Thompson gave an interview and was very insightful about his responses in regard to this whole situation. He didn't necessarily, I think, know that it was happening based on his reactions in the video, but when shared the concerns given in the article, Thompson was like, man, I don't know why anybody would be doing that. And then he explained in how like, essentially he just made it very clear, like, so certain concerns that were voiced in the article, like guys going to the second in line or going to JB Bickerstaff, the head assistant coach. He was like, that's normal. John Beilein's the head coach. He's in charge of so many different things, thinking about so many different aspects. That's why you have assistant coaches, is because you can't have all 15 guys going to the head coach every single game asking all these different questions. He's got a lot of stuff he's trying to think about and then delegate all those different duties to, so that we do have all the bases covered. He can't be the point man to go talk to all the time for every single player. So like, that's completely normal. So I don't know why anybody would even bring that up. And like, hearing that from a player is awesome, because then it makes you look at the situation completely differently. And it kind of makes you question the person who was given the quote, saying like, what's their motivation for painting Beilein in this way?
Someone had a funny tweet in a response to you about JB Bickerstaff being the issue here because it's literally his name.
Oh yeah, that was funny. That was a funny tweet. I don't know if it needs more explanation than what you just gave.
Yeah, that's good.
Bicker staff. He's part of the staff. He's
Very,
yeah,
yes. Part of this whole debacle, I guess, was involved in this potential Kevin Love trade. Do you have a preferred destination that you'd like to see him go to?
I don't. I think that you might see a team that's desperate to try to, who's not really out of the playoffs, but a lot of people kind of think they're faltering, like the Chicago Bulls. Maybe they trade Lowry Markkanen for Kevin Love because they see the opportunity to try to seize the moment, But it's tough to find a spot for Kevin Love because how much does he even bring back in a trade with his bigger contract and the uncertainty of his health and his mental state? Not to question his mental state, but just like there's this seems like he's not happy right now. And that might just be because he's on the Cavs and losing by a lot of points every night. But there's also kind of been this general question of whether or not he actually is, loves basketball or if he just, is playing his job. So I think it's interesting. Do you have any kind of hot spots that you're looking at for Kevin Love, saying like, oh, that would be a good landing spot for him?
I thought that Portland would be. It's been talked about forever, but now with Carmelo, that seems extremely unlikely. I think Phoenix is very interesting.
Didn't you mention last week though that Carmelo could maybe shift down to small forward?
With
Rodney Hood going out for the season with his Achilles injury,
maybe it's not as
even
crazy
more
as
possible.
we thought. Yeah. Speaking of which, I guess the Rodney Hood injury also is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
news from the week.
Yeah, it's a little bit of. I mean, it's a big bummer to see him go down with an injury. And this was another issue though, where he had Achilles soreness the game before, decided to play through the issue the next game, just like Kevin Durant did, and then ended up tearing his Achilles. So I think that's something that we might see teams be way more cautious with going forward, particularly because we had two instances in such a short period of time. But you were saying another team that stood out to you as a potential Kevin Love destination is the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I really like Phoenix, that potential there. They've always run that up-tempo, shoot a lot of threes style forever, and I think he fits that so well. Not necessarily a great defender, but could get a ton of rebounds. You could see him maybe going back a little bit more similar to his Minnesota Timberwolves days and some of those stats in the up-tempo style. Certainly not the size he was at, but that could be a lot of fun with think about Love and Booker playing together. I think that would be really entertaining. Also, you would have another established veteran on a very young team that has already exceeded expectations. So if you're the Suns, this also puts you way ahead of your original timeline, because this year was a lottery year in most people's heads, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And then Rubio and Love getting back together, so that would be fun to watch, right? Didn't they get to play a season or two together with the Timberwolves?
Yes. Yep, that is correct. Let's see. B to the O. To
OKC.
the BBY. I said, what about OKC? That's an interesting proposition.
Absolutely. And both these teams, whether it's Tyler Johnson's contract with the Suns would help facilitate that, or Danilo Gallinari, or Danilo Gallinari going to the Cavs. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the Cavs would just be looking for. I don't think Gallinari has many more years on his contract. So, OKC, Kevin Love. The one thing about that is, like, if OKC was trading for Kevin Love, would they be trying to get rid of Chris Paul's contract? Because I can't imagine the Cavs would want Chris Paul, but then maybe they would want somebody with his name to keep bringing seats in. So, it's an interesting situation. Maybe that is something that's we could see happen.
Well, speaking of the Suns, maybe one of the highlights of the weekend was a little run-in between Harden and Devin Booker on a breakaway layup. And in my opinion, Harden was basically putting the ball and almost shoving Booker, who was already backpedaling on his heels. It was completely unnecessary. Booker was going for a foul though to make sure you wrap him up. What did you think about this play? And we'll get to the aftermath in a moment.
Booker did have him like wrapped around the shoulders. So and then the ball comes up and Harden pushes Booker back. Look, man, it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, right? Like they were both playing hard, and Harden is one of the best players at using his body, putting the ball out there, drawing fouls. And Booker said, I'm not going to let you get a foul on me and a shot. So that was great defense from Booker. Harden took exception to it because it was a little bit more physical than he usually gets. But, he's got a strong torso there. He's able to take those hits. So I just think it was good basketball, man. That's just fun stuff.
Yeah, and some of this is my bias towards James Harden, but
the fun Harden or the exciting Harden you've started to call him, right?
Yeah. Oh, Booker is the exciting Harden in my opinion, and James Harden is just the regular James Harden. But because he does this thing where he tries to wrap up people's arms and draw fouls that way. That's why I think this looked a little bit more harsh than if it was any other player.
Yeah, in the moment, I can see people being like, "Oh, whatever," and they did get in each other's faces afterwards. But it's just, just
so what did you think about that?
Big of a deal,
So okay, so Booker ran back up to him, and there was a small argument there. Booker seemed he didn't run up, I should say. He seemed to walk up pretty calmly, and James Harden didn't like what Booker said, and that's when Booker started a kind of a hissy fit.
Booker supposedly talks a lot of trash, and there's stories out there about Booker playing with his dad growing up, and his dad played in the G League. And that's where he met his mom in Grand Rapids, Michigan, while he was playing for the G League there. But Booker used to play with his dad and with grown men, and his dad would like tell the other grown men, the other professionals, he'd like beat him up, like treat him like any other player, because he wanted Booker to know what it meant to take the hits so that he could play the game while taking those hits. And that's why Booker, just like kind of Harden, he doesn't necessarily shy away from contact, and he likes to play kind of a bang 'em game in the post sometimes, like we'd see, post moves from Kobe too.
All right, this will be my final question for you on this matter for the time being until these two teams match up again. Both players are 6'5". James Harden is winning the weight battle here, I think, by 15 pounds. I believe it's 225 for Harden, 210 for Booker. Who wins in a fight?
I think Booker has reach. Harden has that beard, though.
Yeah, so his chin is protected.
Yeah, and that protects your neck, just like Wu-Tang says, right?
There you go.
I think it was Wu-Tang.
Yes, it is. 100. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what the beard does. People don't realize it. It's not just like for looking handsome. It like people come at you with a knife and they try to slit you from behind. Your beard protects you, protects your neck. You get popped in the face. There's a little bit of cushion there to help you stop from getting knocked out and just falling back. So, Harden definitely has that. Plus, there's the whole wizard aspect of like the more hair you have, the more strong you are spiritually. Just research it. No, I think I'd lean on. Man. You know what though? Booker looks like he would lean into his punches more. Harden looks like he'd be doing those Carmelo punches where you're going like this.
The tush push.
No,
Harden's a flopper, though.
You don't want to get hit back thing, so you just swing your arm out. And,
right.
Anyways.
Harden's a flopper. I think Booker would win, even though he's down 15 pounds in this, supposedly.
Yeah, Booker would end up doing some Mike Tyson stuff, like biting part of Harden's beard off or whatever.
Yeah. So we appreciate you guys joining us. We're doing a live stream right now on YouTube and on Twitter. I'm Anthony Deneau. You can find me on Twitter at Anthony Deneau. He's Kyle McEwen, and you can find him on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA.
Did you forget my name?
Joining us. No, I didn't. I just was I didn't know if I was gonna read your Twitter or just whatever. Bugger
I'll leave
off.
you alone. I'm sorry.
Bugger off, you bloke. Speaking of Twitter, you were blocked by someone over the weekend, and I feel like you have something you want to get off your chest here.
Yeah. While I'm talking about it, I'm gonna try and screen share it if I can go find it. But I don't even know if we can pull it up because, to be completely honest, he blocked me. So there's a Spurs beat writer, Tom Orsborn, and that's ORS born, not Osborne. Anyways, I'd been quote tweeting him a couple times during like news parts where he would report, this starting lineup's coming out, and I'd be like, why isn't Derek White or DeJounte starting together? And just stupid stuff like that. But it was never anything overly like rude. And then I
Or
made
directed at him, seemingly.
huh?
Right? It wasn't even anything. None of it was directed at him.
No, not at all. So I thought that he was blocking me because of that, but it wasn't that. It wasn't that reason he blocked me. He blocked me because I made a dumb joke. So yeah, that's the most frustrating thing about the whole situation is the fact that like it wasn't because I was criticizing Popovich or anything like that. It was just he got mad at me because I made a dumb joke about whether or not, man, we shouldn't have even talked about this until I had it pulled up. I'm sorry. I can't find it right now. But if you go to my Twitter, I definitely was retweeting it. It was essentially, he said, Patty Mills said that the team needed to like, have their juice and lay it all out on the court. And then they were going to like, get a good nap or whatever. And I turned that into a nuanced, dumb joke with, puns and whatnot. And I used all the same terminology. It wasn't funny. And he still blocked me. Like, it was a bad joke. It was just, I like, why are you blocking people when you can just mute them? You don't have to listen to them. You don't have to see what they say. You don't have to block me, man. I need to see his reporting for my job, and for doing the podcast and stuff. So,
Yeah.
like, I need to see his opinion.
Yeah. And now you have a burner account that you'll be following him on.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
I
think everybody has another Twitter account that you can just kind of flip to like look at people who blocked you.
That's right. Mine is Celebs for Frony.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you were that popular. That's good.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Worst segment out of the show so far. Sorry about that, people.
Yes. No, okay. I think we've covered most of the main news from the weekend. Should we talk about what happened and wrap up some of the games we've had on this beautiful Sunday?
Absolutely. So we had 8 games on Sunday, a fairly big slate here. And not a lot of huge performances though. So nothing like, no 50-point performances from anybody. Paul George had 27. Kawhi Leonard had 34. Nemanja Bjelica tied his career high with 30 points in Sacramento's game against Dallas.
Can I say something about him?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever seemed so disinterested with basketball?
I think that like his body language might have been a reason why he didn't play as much or as much as he should have with the Timberwolves.
That's a fair assessment.
So that's so interesting. But you say that about somebody who, and his body language got him 30 points with 4 3-pointers, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, a block. What? I bet it's just because he has like super high shoulders.
That is a part of it, but he also was I was watching the Kings broadcast, and he was, of course, the player of the game. So he had the post-game interview, and it was just the same thing. There was very little emotion and kind of poor body language, like he said.
Oh, he played, he played 34 minutes. He was probably a little bit tired, and yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't hang that on him too much. Plus, he had in the final play, he had a little slip to the hoop and got an easy bucket. I wish somebody would have posted a meme of the lady underneath the hoop who was just kind of sitting there looking into the camera going, what just happened? So that was an interesting game though, the Sacramento and Dallas game.
Absolutely.
It was the Kings were up big for a lot of the game. Then they just couldn't get things going or couldn't get their shot to go in the fourth. The Mavs chipped away. Ended up getting within 2 points, but just couldn't seal it. Couldn't get back to actually, push it to overtime or anything.
And there's a lot of side stories going on in between these two teams. So last year you had the trade that put Harrison Barnes on the Kings, Josh Jackson,
Justin.
Justin Jackson, sorry. And maybe was Yogi Ferrell in that trade? I guess I'm not really sure. But then
no, Yogi got traded or signed this offseason,
okay.
I believe.
But also aside from that, the Kings could have taken Luka Doncic and instead took Marvin Bagley, who was out this game.
Yeah, that's actually that's the whataboutism on the with the Kings on that one. Look, Bagley's going to end up being a good player. Everybody who didn't draft Luka was an idiot, and that's just the way it is.
There you go.
A couple other interesting lines from the night. OG Anunoby finally had a big game, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 4 steals, 1 block. He'd been struggling of late. He got extra run, though, or more guaranteed run in this game because Fred VanVleet left the Toronto and Philadelphia game with a knee contusion. After the game, we learned that Fred VanVleet originally suffered this knee contusion in the previous game. He was only able to play 12 minutes in this one on Sunday, and then he's going to be questionable for Monday's game against Chicago. So hopefully Fred VanVleet can get healthy because we just got Kyle Lowry back. We just got Serge Ibaka back for the Raptors, and I want to see how much they can maintain their dominance from last season without Kawhi, or at least contend for that second or third spot in the East.
Well, speaking of returns, we have some other potential returns coming up Monday night.
Yeah, some interesting things for Monday. Gordon Hayward might be back. He's questionable for the Boston Celtics. He's, of course, been out with a broken hand here for about a month now. I already mentioned Fred VanVleet possibly returning. We still hope to see Derek Favors get back. The Pelicans have really let him have as much time as he's needed after the passing of his mother, and that's been awesome to see. It's always good to see people and organizations put people above, the sport, this game that the guys play. Probably the most exciting potential return, though, even though I should give proper props to Gordon Hayward, is Ja Morant being probable for Memphis's game at the Golden State Warriors. The Grizzlies ruled Ja Morant week to week just a week ago, but I think that label of, well, it might be 1 week, it might be 2 weeks, it might be 6 weeks, I think that scared a lot of Ja Morant fans. But yeah, having him probable for Monday's game is definitely an exciting thing, considering that's the last game of the night too. So a lot of people are going to be checking it out, and it would have been way more boring without Ja Morant.
Of course. One of the things that has been one of the topics, I guess, of the NBA so far has been ratings. And with a lot of the retirements and injuries that have left us without plenty of our superstars or borderline superstars or entertaining players and top players on teams, we do have this really good crop of young guys from the last 3 drafts, including this most recent one, and they're not household names quite yet. I think Luka has broken that barrier, but a lot of these guys that maybe a lot of mainstream sports fans don't know, or even a guy like De'Aaron Fox, but a lot of these guys are going to be household names a year or 2 from now, and I think that some of the issues about the talk of ratings will go away when we have more of our healthy superstars and this next crop of players gets to that next level.
I was watching a live stream from somebody on Twitter, and I apologize, I don't remember exactly who it was, but they were sharing the idea that because LeBron moved from the East Coast to the West Coast and Kawhi moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, those guys are playing 3 hours later every night. Mm-hmm. Or so that might be a thing too, where it's like you're just not getting those East Coast viewers the same way that you used to for all the LeBron games and maybe a lot of the Kawhi games. And you wonder if there's maybe some other star players who made similar moves, and the fact that the games are later at night for a lot of fans, you are going to see fewer people maybe tuning in to certain games. Like you're definitely getting a lot less people watching. I was trying to make an argument, but maybe even Anthony Davis too. He was Central Time Zone, so
sure,
yeah. Anyways, I think that makes sense, and ultimately, I do just think it's all this rating stock is ultimately a reflection of the transition from cable to streaming. And then that's, I was listening to the Adrian Wojnarowski podcast with Sam Presti, the general manager from the Oklahoma City Thunder. And there's a lot of interesting things shared there where they talked about some of those potential changes that we've talked about here on the podcast coming to the NBA, and to get a current GM's perspective of a lot of things was a lot of fun. So I'd encourage anybody who's, turn us off, go listen to that Sam Presti podcast. It's a good one.
All right. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence there, Kyle. Is there anything big we need to know about for tomorrow?
I mean, that was pretty much it. We kind of covered the bigger guys who are returning. So that's all we're really, looking forward to in a lot of respects. I don't think there's any huge matchups for Monday night, which is kind of frustrating, actually. You look, the Clippers at Indiana is an interesting matchup, and it's the first game of the night, but Kawhi Leonard's going to be sitting this game out most likely. So, I mean, we heard Doc Rivers say that one of the two stars is going to be sitting out, and Paul George already said he's going to play. So Kawhi's not playing on Monday, and that is, of course, that's what happens on back-to-backs. Kawhi doesn't play in one of them. He played on Sunday, had a great game. That is what it is. The Gordon Hayward potential return game, you almost say to yourselves, he's got to return in this game because it's against Cleveland. So, why not bring him back against a team that's not going to pose, too much of an issue there. And then the rest of the matchups, they're all just kind of Toronto at Chicago. That's not too exciting. You'd expect Toronto to beat the crap out of Chicago. Then again, Chicago lost a close game on Sunday, so maybe they're amped up to try to win one.
Yeah, both teams coming off a back-to-back.
The Chicago Heat and Chicago Bulls versus Miami Heat game was a lot of fun on Sunday.
Game of the day for sure.
Lauri Markkanen played really well, had 20 points for the third time in 4 games. So a lot of those struggles we've seen from Lauri Markkanen seem to be kind of just falling to the wayside. And now it's like, what was everybody, worrying about? It was early in the season. He was dealing with a chest issue or a torso injury. Like, there were a lot of things that you could look at and say, oh, that's why Jim Boylan's his coach. Other interesting things from this Miami Heat game, Tyler Hero was absolutely sensational. Hit the go-ahead 3-pointer, I believe, right?
He hit the go-ahead 3-pointer. He hit the one that really sent them into overtime. He had 14 of 16 points at one time between the fourth quarter and overtime.
Wow.
I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, finished with his second highest mark of his NBA career, 27 points. He set his career high back on October 29th with 29. So, yeah, great game from Tyler Hero. It's a lot of fun to watch him. Still, you have this issue with the fact that, like, we can't expect these big performances or this much opportunity for Tyler Hero from night to night this season, because when the team is healthy and they have guys like Goran Dragic and Justice Winslow, who are both out in the rotation, there's just less opportunity for touches. The ball gets spread around more. Maybe that changes, though. Maybe, continued great performances, because watching Tyler Hero play, as much as I want to look at his situation and go, the opportunity may not be there every night, watching him play as a coach, I'm sure Spoelstra's kind of thinking, like, I want the opportunity to be there every night for this guy. He can make those big plays even if he struggles all game.
Him and Nunn are a really special rookie duo. It's a lot of fun to watch. That's a really good backcourt. That's one of the the easiest teams to watch right now. And
the continued growth of Bam Adebayo too is so much fun. Jimmy Butler, he's a frustrating player to watch at times, because he'll play the hero ball, but he'll also he doesn't really stop fighting. So it's hard to criticize him too much for his on-court play.
To wrap things up, let's go through some of our comments here. Bucket Ninja earlier wanted to talk about Rui Hachimura and his night. He said, he is smooth, just added the Wizards to my pass pack.
Yeah, no, he's continuing to play a ton of minutes. It's fun. And I think we've both kind of expressed that we're fans of him. We like what he's shown so far, and I hope that he continues to find more comfort on the court, or consistency.
There you go. 17.7 rebounds, 4 assists tonight for Rui. Jack Mehoff was kind of talking about the Knicks, and Mitchell Robinson talking about how he was held back with Fizdale being the coach. You're hoping that things open up for Mitchell Robinson, hopefully as a starter, at least starter's minutes, as long as he can keep his fouls in check.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anybody realistically thinks Taj Gibson's going to hold the job all season. There will come a point where the Knicks make changes. And I think one reason why we saw the same starting lineup in Mike Miller's first game is because he didn't have an opportunity to go through a practice with the team. So he may have talked about certain sets that they were going to run or implement that were different, but it wasn't, he wasn't going to put in a lot of new stuff. So you weren't going to get a vastly different team in Mike Miller's first game, and you're probably not going to get a vastly different team most of the season, but there will absolutely, I mean, there has to come a time where Taj Gibson gets taken out of that starting center spot. Mitchell Robinson's given the, he had it last season already. Like it doesn't make any sense that he's not starting. It's completely boneheaded. But it is what it is.
Then we have Bucket Ninja and OK Fedge talking a little bit about the Chicago Bulls. OK Fedge, I guess some of the comments here: fire Garpax, fire Beilein, agreeing with us on that. Garpax obviously been an issue for quite a long time. A hot take of Kobe White over Tyler Hero, two of the hot young shooters from this draft. That's fun. And then Bucket Ninja also said that Carter Jr. is having a nice year as well. So
yeah, I mean, even in a game on Sunday where Wendell Carter Jr. had just 7 points, 10 rebounds, he played 40 minutes. He was out there because they needed his defense out there. They wanted his defense out there. And I think that's awesome. Even when you see this line that may not be good for people who play fantasy, you got to recognize that, like, the fact that Wendell Carter was leaned on so much, that just shows again how important he is. And this was with Thaddeus Young back in action after sitting out the last game for personal reasons. So Beilein had other options in the front court to go with. He was already leaning on Lauri Markkanen for a ton of minutes in this one with granted it did go to overtime, but absolutely. Wendell Carter huge fan of his and what he portends to be in the NBA. He's going to be Al Horford with probably a higher ceiling when it's all said and done, which is a pretty dang great player.
All right, folks. Well, we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Any comments or feedback is always welcome. We want to hear what you guys like. We want to hear what you don't like. And once again, thank you so much for checking us out. We'll be back tomorrow. We're here 5 days a week. I'm Anthony Deneau. You can find me on Twitter at Anthony Deneau. He is Kyle McEwen. You can find him at RotoKyleNBA.
Thank you, guys.
Show. We'll see you tomorrow.